Welcome back to the Forensic Archive. Today we decrypt Volume 4, The Time Anomaly. We have been taught that time is a constant, a steady river moving forward, but the data from the wilderness suggests otherwise. In this 25-minute mega audit, we investigate 4 coordinates where time didn't just bend. It fractured. Your field clearance for this briefing is now active. File Jubbers-01. The 0-sec skip of Christopher Thompkins, a surveyor deleted from the timeline in a single frame. File Jubbers-02. The stasis of Katherine Van Alst, an 8-year-old girl who survived 6 days in a bubble of frozen time. File Jubbers-03. The 10-year echo of Bill Ewasko, the desert signal that traveled across a decade to reach us. And file Jubbers-04. The grand reset of Stephen Kubacki, the man whose life was hard formatted for 15 months. We aren't here for stories. We are here to audit the variables of our reality. To secure your authorization for Volume 5, confirm your enlistment in the archive now. The audit of the time anomaly begins now. Stay safe. Stay found.
January 25, 2002, Ellerslie, Georgia. We are entering the first coordinate of Volume 4, a case that challenges the very continuity of time. Christopher Thompkins, a 20-year-old surveyor, was part of a 4-man crew working in a dense wooded area near Highway 115. This was a tactical work formation. In surveying, precision is everything. The 4 men were walking in a straight line, spaced exactly 50 feet apart. Christopher was the second man in that line. He was flanked by a colleague 50 feet ahead and another 50 feet behind. The field logic. In this formation, you don't just see your partner, you hear them. You hear the crunch of leaves, the sound of tools, the rhythm of a workday. It was 1 p.m. The sun was up. The environment was stable, but in the time it took for the lead surveyor to look at his compass and look back, the second link in the chain had been severed. There was no scream, no sound of a struggle, no crashing through the brush. Christopher Thompkins had been deleted in a 0-second interval. We call this the 0-sec skip, a point where the terrain's frame rate drops to 0, and a human being is simply skipped over by reality. The search began within minutes. His co-workers, confused and terrified, began to circle the area. They found the first piece of impossible data less than an hour later. Christopher's work tools were lying on the ground, exactly where he had been standing. But 50 feet away, hanging from the top of a barbed wire fence, they found his right work boot. The field logic. We must audit the physics of this evidence. For a human to lose a tightly laced work boot while being taken, there must be massive kinetic force. Yet, the barbed wire fence was undisturbed. No blood was found on the barbs, no shreds of denim from his jeans, no signs of a body being dragged over the wire. It was as if the boot had been teleported onto the fence while the man inside it was extracted vertically. Let us look at this through the field logic lens. Imagine a film reel running through a projector. Each frame shows Christopher walking. Suddenly, one single frame is cut out of the reel and replaced with a blank. To the audience, it looks like a glitch, a 0-sec skip, where the character is here in frame 100 and gone in frame 101. The mountain didn't just take Christopher, it edited him out of the timeline, leaving only a single boot as a remnant of the corrupted code. The scale of the search was unprecedented for Harris County. Dozens of officers, bloodhounds, and thermal-equipped aircraft swept the woods for weeks. The dogs, however, could not pick up a single molecular trail, not even at the base of the fence where the boot was found. The data remained at absolute 0. Years passed. The archive stayed cold. Then, in 2006, the terrain released a final chilling data point. A fragment of Christopher's skull was discovered in the same general area that had been searched hundreds of times before. The field logic. This is fragmented redeposition. In a time anomaly, the terrain doesn't return the subject in one piece. It releases fragments of data across different years. The fact that his skull was found in a cleared zone suggests it wasn't there during the initial audit. It was redeposited by the mountain once the temporal glitch had stabilized. Christopher Thompkins didn't spend 4 years in those woods. He was suspended in the 0-sec skip until the terrain was finished with its audit of his existence. The disappearance of Christopher Thompkins remains a canary in the coal mine for industrial safety in the American South. It forced a total re-evaluation of visual contact protocols for surveying and forestry crews. We now understand that 50 feet of distance is not a safety margin. It is a gap wide enough for a time anomaly to occur. Today, his case is taught in specialized SAR training as a warning of instantaneous extinction, a reminder that nature doesn't need a storm or a predator to take you. It only needs a microsecond of temporal instability. Christopher's left boot was never found. His body was never found. Only that single boot on the wire remains as the mountain's signature, a trophy of a zero-sec skip. The woods of Georgia do not apologize for the frames they delete. They simply continue to run the reel. We have concluded the first audit of Volume 4. The zero-sec skip remains an unsealed archive, but the corruption of time is spreading to other coordinates. Your authorization to access Case Neuro 2, the file on the temporal echo, is now being processed. To maintain your field clearance and ensure you receive the next decrypted briefing for Volume 4, you must confirm your enlistment in the archive now. Hit the subscribe button to authorize your access to the truth that hides in the blinks of our reality. The mountain is always editing. Stay vigilant, stay safe, stay found. This has been a forensic audit by TheDarkestFilesTV.
July 1946. Devil's Den State Park, Arkansas. We are entering a coordinate where the ticking of the clock becomes an unreliable variable. Katherine Van Alst, an 8-year-old girl, was playing near her family's campsite. It was a clear summer day. Within seconds, Katherine stepped away from the visual tether of her family and vanished. This wasn't just a lost child. It was an entry into a zone the locals called Devil's Den, a terrain known for its labyrinthine caves and jagged, light-swallowing rocks. The field logic: when a biological asset as young as 8 years old disappears, the survival window is calculated in hours. But at Devil's Den, the variables were corrupted from the start. Katherine didn't just walk into the woods, she walked into a stasis field, a point where the external world continued to age, while her personal timeline was locked. For 6 days, the state of Arkansas held its breath, launching one of the largest searches in its history. But they weren't searching a forest. They were searching for a ghost, trapped in a bubble of frozen time. 6 days later, the audit produced a result that violated every law of pediatric movement. Katherine was found alive, sitting in a cave at the top of a rugged mountain ridge. She was 7 miles away from the point of disappearance. To reach this coordinate, an 8-year-old girl in a simple cotton dress would have to navigate miles of dense, thorny brush and perform a 600-foot vertical climb over jagged limestone. The field logic: we audit the physical condition of the subject. Katherine was found in a state of hyper-clean stasis. Despite 6 days in the Ozark wilderness, a place of mud, thorns, and insects, her dress was described by searchers as being remarkably clean. She had no significant scratches, no insect bites, no signs of the brutal dehydration that should have claimed a child of her mass within 72 hours. Let us look at this through the field logic lens. Imagine a clock on a wall. The gears are moving, the second hand is sweeping. Now, imagine a fly lands on the glass. To the fly, the room is moving, but the clock beneath its feet has stopped. Katherine was that fly. The mountain didn't just hide her, it placed her in a time stasis where her biological needs, hunger, thirst, and decay, were paused, while the rest of the world searched for 6 agonizing days. When the searchers finally reached her, Katherine's behavior was the most chilling data point of all. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She sat in the cave with a vacant, calm expression. When asked how she felt, she simply said, "I've been right here." The field logic: this is temporal disorientation. To Katherine, those 6 days were not a nightmare of survival. They were a blurred moment of stasis. She had no concept of the 144 hours that had passed in our reality. The data suggests that her internal biological clock was out of sync with the mountain's external timeline. The mountain didn't just move her 7 miles and 600 feet up, it deposited her there without allowing her body to experience the passage of time. She didn't climb that mountain. She was simply placed there by a collapse in the temporal fabric of Devil's Den. This is the absolute zero of logic, where a child can survive the impossible, because, to her, the impossible never happened. Never. The case of Katherine Van Alst remains a canary in the coal mine for search and rescue theories involving children. It forced a total reevaluation of the distance from LKP, the last known position models. We now understand that a child's movement cannot be calculated solely by their physical strength when a time anomaly is a factor. Every modern SAR protocol that tells searchers to look where it's impossible for a child to be is built on the silence of Katherine's clean dress and her 6-day stasis. Her case taught us that the wilderness doesn't always kill. Sometimes it simply archives a subject, holding them in a state of suspended reality until it decides to release them back into our timeline. She returned, but she returned from a coordinate that no longer exists. Katherine Van Alst walked out of the stasis, but she left behind a hole in our understanding of time. We have concluded the audit of File No. 2. The stasis remains an unsealed archive, but the anomaly is evolving. Your authorization to access Case No. 3. Bill Ewasko, the man whose phone sent a delayed echo from a coordinate that didn't exist, is now being decrypted. This next file will test the very limits of your field clearance. To ensure you receive this high-priority briefing for Volume 4, you must confirm your enlistment in the archive now. Hit the subscribe button to authorize your access to the truth that hides in the echoes of the desert. The mountain is always calculating the next skip. Stay vigilant, stay safe, stay found. This has been a forensic audit by TheDarkestFilesTV. June 24, 2010. Joshua Tree National Park, California. We are entering a coordinate where the digital and physical worlds collided and then fractured. Bill Ewasko, a 54-year-old experienced hiker, set out for a standard day hike. He was a man of precision, a veteran traveler who knew how to read the terrain. He left a detailed itinerary. He was supposed to return by the evening. When he didn't, his car was found exactly where he said it would be, at the Juniper Flats trailhead. The field logic. In a survival audit, the car is the anchor point. Search teams calculated a standard 5-mile radius from this anchor, covering every logical path Bill could have taken in the 100-degree desert heat. But Bill Ewasko wasn't in a logical path. He had entered a radio dead zone, a place where the desert doesn't just swallow sound, it archives human presence until it decides to release a signal. For 3 days, the desert remained silent. And then, at 6:30 a.m. on June 27th, the digital silence was shattered by a delayed echo that would haunt search and rescue teams for the next 12 years. We must audit the digital data. On the 3rd day of the search, Bill's cell phone, which had been off or out of range for over 60 hours, suddenly pulsed. It connected to a cell tower known as the Serenity Tower, located over 10 miles away. This was the only data point we had. But when forensic signal analysts examined the geometry of that ping, they hit the absolute zero of logic. Based on the mountain's topography, there was no direct line of sight between Bill's suspected location and that tower. To send that signal, Bill would have had to be standing on a specific high-altitude peak that he had no reason to climb, or the signal itself had to have been bent by a spatio-temporal distortion. The field logic. This is what we call the 10-year echo. The signal didn't just travel through the air, it reflected off the terrain in a way that suggested the desert was acting as a massive, corrupted mirror. Let us look at this through the field logic lens. Imagine a maze of mirrors in total darkness. You shine a flashlight once. Normally, the light hits a wall and stops. But in Bill's case, the desert held that light, bouncing it off a hidden angle of time and space, only allowing it to reach the sensor 3 days later. The signal didn't prove where he was. It proved that where he was no longer part of our map. For 12 years, Bill Ewasko was a ghost in the machine. Thousands of volunteers, specialized expert searchers like Tom Mahood, and elite mountain teams spent over a decade searching for the source of that Serenity ping. They audited every canyon, every bush, every pile of rocks. The desert gave up nothing. The data remained at 0 until February 2022. 12 years after his disappearance, Bill's remains were finally discovered in a rugged canyon, not near the Serenity Tower signal path, but in a coordinate that had been searched multiple times during the initial 2010 audit. The field logic. This is delayed redeposition. If the terrain archives a subject, it eventually must release them. The fact that he was found in a previously cleared zone suggests that his matter was not hidden by the desert, but was suspended in a temporal loop. Bill didn't spend 12 years in that canyon. He was redeposited there only after the desert's internal audit was complete. He was found with his gear, his water bottle, and his phone, all of them relics from a decade that had been skipped. The disappearance and 12-year recovery of Bill Ewasko served as a canary in the coal mine for modern digital search protocols. It forced a total reevaluation of how we trust cell tower pings in high anomaly zones. It proved that in the wilderness, a digital signal can be just as deceptive as a mirage. Every search algorithm we use today to calculate probability of area, POA, has been modified because of the Serenity ping. Bill's case taught us that an expert hiker can be exactly where you looked, and yet be invisible to the eyes of the present. He taught us that the desert doesn't just kill, it stores you in a digital echo until the coordinates of time and space align once again. The desert of Joshua Tree does not delete its archives, it only delays them. We have concluded the audit of file number 03. The 10-year echo remains a testimony to the instability of our digital reality, but the most disturbing file of Volume 4 is yet to be unsealed. Your authorization to access case number 04, Stephen Kubacki, the man who disappeared in the snow and woke up 15 months later in another state with no memory of the gap, is now being processed. This is the grand reset. To maintain your field clearance and ensure you are notified when this final briefing for Volume 4 is decrypted, you must confirm your enlistment in the archive now. Hit the subscribe button to authorize your access to the truth that hides in the resets of our life. The mountain is watching and the clock is ticking. Stay vigilant, stay safe, stay found. This has been a forensic audit by TheDarkestFilesTV. February 1978, the shores of Lake Michigan. We are entering the final and most disturbing coordinate of Volume 4, a point where the human timeline was not just bent, but completely overwritten. Stephen Kubacki, a 23-year-old experienced cross-country skier and student, set out for a solo run across the frozen expanse of the lake. The conditions were brutal, typical of a Great Lakes winter. When he failed to return, a search party tracked his biological signature into the white void. They found his skis and poles abandoned on the ice. They followed his footprints for another 200 yards. And then, the data reaches the absolute zero of logic. The footprints didn't lead to open water. They didn't show signs of a struggle or a fall. They simply stopped. One moment, there was a man moving through the snow. The next, there was only the indifferent silence of the ice. We call this the threshold of ice, the exact millimeter where Stephen Kubacki was unplugged from our reality. The mountain, or in this case, the frozen lake, didn't just take him, it initiated a system shutdown of his entire existence. The search was exhaustive, but the audit returned a persistent value of 0. For 15 months, Stephen Kubacki was archived as a presumed deceased entry in the Michigan state records. Spring came, the ice melted, and still, no body was recovered. The world moved on. The clock kept ticking for everyone else. But for Stephen, the gears of time had locked. He had entered a state of temporal suspension, a 15-month gap where his biological clock was paused while his physical mass was relocated across the continent. The field logic. We must audit the sheer scale of this displacement. When a human being vanishes for over a year, they usually leave a trail of transactions, sightings, or biological traces. But for 15 months, Stephen Kubacki existed in a data dead zone. No one saw him. No one spoke to him. He didn't eat, sleep, or breathe in our coordinate system. He was a file that had been moved to a hidden partition of the world's hard drive, waiting for the command to reboot. May 1979. Pittsfield, Massachusetts, 700 miles away from the frozen shores of Michigan. A young man wakes up in a grassy field. He is wearing clothes he doesn't recognize. He is carrying a backpack filled with maps and hitchhiking gear he has no memory of buying. That man was Stephen Kubacki. When he approached a local and asked for the date, his reality collapsed. To him, it was still February 1978. He believed he had just been skiing moments ago. The field logic. We call this the Grand Reset. Let us look at this through the field logic lens. Imagine you are working on a complex document on your computer. Suddenly, the power cuts out. When you turn the machine back on, the document is gone, and the system has reverted to a saved state from 15 months ago. The hardware is the same, but the memory of those 15 months has been wiped clean from the drive. Stephen's body had traveled 700 miles. His clothes had changed. He had lived, somehow, for over a year, but his consciousness had been reset by the terrain. The mountain didn't just move him. It performed a hard format of his brain, leaving him with a 15-month hole in his soul that no audit can ever recover. The return of Stephen Kubacki remains a canary in the coal mine for modern psychiatry and wilderness forensics. It forced a total reevaluation of fugue states versus temporal anomalies. While skeptics argue for a psychological break, the forensic data, the lack of any sightings for 15 months and the precision of the footprint termination suggests something much more disturbing. His case is taught today as the ultimate warning of cognitive rewriting, the idea that the terrain can occasionally act as a cosmic editor, deleting and reinserting subjects into the timeline at will. Every modern protocol for long-term missing persons has been influenced by the 15-month gap of Stephen Kubacki. He proved that you don't always die when you disappear. Sometimes you are simply rebooted into a life you no longer recognize. The ice of Michigan and the fields of Massachusetts do not share their secrets. They only share the man they relocated. We have concluded the final audit of Volume 4, The Time Anomaly. From the 0-second skip of a surveyor to the 15-month reset of a skier, the data confirms that time is not a constant, but a variable controlled by the terrain. Volume 4 is now sealed. But the archive is only growing darker. Your authorization to access the upcoming Volume 5, The Subterranean Silence, the investigation into those who were taken not into the woods, but into the earth itself, is now being processed. To grant yourself field clearance for the next series of classified briefings, you must confirm your enlistment in the archive now. Hit the subscribe button to authorize your next level of access. The audit never truly ends. Stay vigilant. Stay safe. Stay found. This has been a forensic audit by The Darkest Files TV. The audit of the time anomaly is complete. From the 0-second skip to the 15-month reset, the data remains undeniable. Time is not a fixed line, but a variable controlled by the terrain. These 4 subjects are the canaries in the coal mine for our understanding of reality. Every modern search algorithm and temporal model we use today is built upon the silence of those who were archived by these anomalies. The mountains do not follow our clocks. They run on an internal cycle that we are only beginning to decrypt. In the absolute zero of logic, time is the ultimate auditor. Your forensic investigation for Volume 4 is now closed, but the archive is only getting deeper. Your authorization for Volume 5, The Subterranean Silence, the investigation into those who vanished not into the woods, but into the earth itself, is currently pending. To grant yourself final field clearance and unlock the next classified series, you must hit the subscribe button now. Authorization is earned by those who seek the truth beneath the surface. Stay vigilant. Stay safe, stay found. This has been a forensic audit by The Darkest Files TV.